today with Tornadus being left at home. That leaves the Urshifu on the other side as the fastest Pokemon in the matchup because there's no Choice Scarf this time on Kian's side. Really could make it a problem. And so, yeah, there it is on the field for Kian.
Right away, going to see the Choice Scarf Urshifu for Kian. There is differences with these Urshifus, though. We've seen so many of the Choice Scarf. Kian's is actually going to be the Mystic Water one, so you're giving up the speed for more damage, but that does mean when we're looking at this early game, you can definitely get really, really pressured with the speed coming on out. And when your partner Pokemon is a Landorus that is not going to appreciate any sort of hits from the Urshifu on the other side, you definitely have to be worried. And it can be a Terastallization really early spent, but then you don't have that for your Restricted later on.
Right, it would be a quick use of the Terastallization, also leaves the Landorus vulnerable to Ogerpon on future turns. But the speed advantage, despite being generally the slower team, is fully in Kian's favor right now. Puts Kian in the back seat on this turn and needing to use Terastallization to keep Landorus safe.
Yeah, when you're looking at an Urshifu on the opposing side, Terra Water kind of feels like it's the only safe option at that point. So to click the button now makes a lot of sense. As sure enough, keep the slot honest, keep the game honest. Right away is Surging Strikes just going to be doing about a third of its damage. This is not nearly what it would have been without the Terastallization. So I'd say a Terastallization definitely very well spent. To follow up though, the Power Whip, and that's going to hurt a lot more. Sure, now you Terastallize to get past the Surging Strikes, but what a pin into this slot. Landorus goes down, doesn't get to move, and you have just used your Terastallization on the match. Now, your Urshifu gets to fire off into the Ogerpon, but Surging Strikes doesn't even look like it's going to be enough damage to take it down, so you just lost out on this trade.
Yeah, strong turn for Kian, who gets the right pin, goes for the Landorus both before and after the Terastallization. It isn't as bad for Kian as it could have been. You know, a lot of players might have protected their Urshifu there with a faster Ogerpon on the other side and no Focus Sash for Urshifu, but does manage to get the Surging Strikes off, but loses Landorus and the Terastallization in the process. But keep in mind, if the Terastallization hadn't been spent, then Surging Strikes would have KO'd the Landorus, and then Power Whip would have just moved over and KO'd Urshifu. So the Terastallization is still necessary, even within that turn where Landorus goes down.
So still hurts, but could have been worse, is a lot of what I'm gathering from this situation. But now you have to figure out where you're going to pick up the pieces. Sure, you still have your Urshifu around. Ogerpon just on a sliver of health on this turn. And I mean, when you're looking at these Pokemon, you know that, A, they're faster than your own Urshifu. You can see what this Zacian can do in terms of the offense, but there is still Terastallization on the opposing end, and if you think this is going to be a play rough into the Urshifu, well then something like the Terastallization makes a lot of sense to make sure you're going to drop that weakness.
It's great for amplifying the damage, trying to get a 2-hit KO onto Zacian, as well as, like you say, resisting, not being weak to the play rough.
At least if you are going to be a little bit slower, you can have a priority, and Ogerpon, you didn't get the KO the first time around, but you'll do just enough damage with the Aqua Jet. But now Surging Strikes, drop your weakness, but now you'll also have a little bit more damage. Zacian is pretty built though, and is still going to be taking this hit regardless. And that's again where the Choice Scarf with this Urshifu as opposed to this Mystic Water really kind of makes a difference there. But Flavor Up in return, thanks to that Terastallization, not going to be enough for that KO.
Not enough. It doesn't look like it's an Aqua Jet KO range either, which means that Urshifu is likely to get another attack off on the next turn. Could really start to be mounting damage on Kian's side, right? If Urshifu is able to get a KO onto Zacian, and then Landorus gets to free swing into Urshifu before the next attack comes out, then Kian will have really spent a ton of Pokemon early on in this game.
That's where it's dangerous too. And looking at the amount of damage that the Zacian's taken, I mean, there is a fourth final Pokemon in the back in this Umbreon, but at the same time, it's still going to be a lot of damage that could be spent into you. And it's where we're really seeing that first turn. Yeah, the first turn could have been worse, but it could have been a lot better at this situation. You can see it in this moment now.
Yeah, I mean, the lead matchup was just kind of devastating for Kian, right? Having those two faster Pokemon on the other side and kind of being immediately at a speed deficit in a matchup he probably mostly considered as being the speed on his advantage put him in this corner where now, like, Umbreon's the best option to be able to come into the Surging Strikes, but it still looks like such a difficult position.
Yeah, the Umbreon definitely a little bit more on this bulky side. So with the Terastallization, this is going to be bringing it down to about a third of its health, just a little bit over. So yeah, you keep your Zacian for now, but that's still a lot of damage on the swap in. Earth Power into the opposing Urshifu is going to be holding on and will have the opportunity to at least take care of the Landers onto the opposing side, bringing Kian down to just 2 Pokemon, but still, when we're looking at the speed, the other Urshifu, that one's still pointed out as a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting the targeting there. Kian opting to get the Surging Strikes into Landorus. Of course, you get way more total damage getting a one-hit KO onto Landorus than you do for just finishing off the Urshifu on the other side, but it leaves that fast Urshifu really threatening a KO everywhere. We saw how much damage it did to Umbreon on the switch-in, so it can get that KO. The Urshifu, of course, very low, can get that KO. The Zacian in the back, very low, so can get that KO. There's no way to stop a Surging Strikes, which will be the first thing to move on the next turn from picking up a KO. Then you have to deal with Calyrex afterwards. There's still ways this can resolve for Kian very positively. You just need to get rid of the Urshifu and then let Zacian fight up against the Calyrex. There's no Trastalization left to use, so Calyrex is very vulnerable to steal offense from the Zacian, but may not be a one-hit KO into Zacian either.
Yeah, that's true, and this is a pivotal one. It's been kind of downhill the entire time. Gonna go for the Aqua Jet, but yeah, that is just too much damage that's needed done at this point. You're outsped. You knew that it's gonna be rough, but it's gonna be a target into this Umbreon instead. So Umbreon will not have an opportunity to try and close out what the Urshifu couldn't. And then with the Calyrex, the final one to be able to act on this turn, we already saw how low the health bars are just kind of across the board. So this should be a pretty easy little pickup for the Calyrex. Glacial Lance, single target, 16 HP. Yeah, no shot.
The Aqua Jet really interesting there. Of course, you could have just had both Pokemon targeted into the Urshifu with using Surging Strikes or Close Combat rather than Aqua Jet and gotten that KO by the end of the turn, but instead kind of risking it all on the Aqua Jet, which means no KO happens and this game's just over, right? Now Urshifu moves before the Zacian and picks up the KO, so Kian's going to flee from this game. Really, that Choice Scarf Urshifu just stuck around way too long, had way too much impact on this set.
And that's the tough one too, especially when, yeah, your team on paper, you got a lot of these speedy options, but Kian leads, well, the 2 of his fastest Pokemon, and sure enough, they were able to just do so much damage onto the team. And that first turn was just so devastating. Again, like you said, could have been worse, definitely could have been a lot better. So I definitely anticipate going into the second game, there's got to be at least a switch up from the get-go so you don't get pinned like that. Yeah,
I think Kian needs to lead with enough speed to not be so vulnerable early on. I think maybe too worried about the slower mode available with NDD and Pelipper and Calyrex, but just missed how damaging that aggressive set of Ogerpon, Urshifu, and Landorus could be when Zacian came out a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, trying to go for the Aqua Jet at the end. Rough then too, because if you knew it was in the other slot, you could maybe try and target into the Urshifu with yours with just something like a regular Surging Strikes, but that's also so hard in the moment to kind of really call out. So down 1, opportunity to kind of rethink. But where do you think that adjustments could be made here going into this game too, at least like on a Pokemon front?
I think I'm not sure I would encourage any major adjustments on a Pokemon front. I think Tornadus is very difficult to bring in this matchup, though this is similar to the first match we saw today, where Tornadus feels very difficult to bring on paper. It's really awful to bring against the Calyrex Ice Rider. But if you end up in a matchup where you're getting beat on speed because you're not bringing Tailwind, then maybe you have to start considering it, right? A Tornadus early on would have really mitigated the threat of that Choice Scarf Urshifu and helped be faster than the Ogerpon on the other side. But I think generally Tornadus is difficult to bring. And so the Pokemon that were brought seem valuable, but I think we'd be looking at 2 key adjustments, being sooner to have something fast on the field. Like the Zacian gets you something over the Ogerpon speed, for instance. And then really prioritizing getting rid of that Choice Scarf Urshifu. I think too many targets went the other way, like Surging Strikes that KO'd the Landorus, the Aqua Jet choice to not just really try to get it off the field. I think the Choice Scarf Urshifu has to be a trade. You know that Kian is going to get something for it by sending it on the field, but you have to make that a one-time trade, not a repeated Surging Strikes.
With a lead that was so successful in that first game, no surprise that Kian's going to be going back for it in the second game, but adjustment already. We're not going to see Landorus coming up from Kian. It will be that Tornadus. So this is the opportunity to put on some speed as well as some offense.
Yeah, great adjustment if you think those fast mode is coming, and sure enough it is. The Ogrepon and the Urshifu are on the other side. Now you can use Tailwind to get up over the Ogrepon speed so that you're not worried about Power Whip coming into Urshifu. We also saw Urshifu miss the KO with Surging Strikes last time, but you can also use Rain Dance to get past there if you need to. So some flexible options from Tornadus to be able to capitalize with Urshifu in the short term.
The only thing with Rain Dance is if you are going to help Kian's own Urshifu be able to get extra damage down the line, you need to have a really solid answer in place for that. It's going to be Indeedee swap in. We're not going to be sticking around with that Ogrepon, and we talked about it Indeedee in this Rocky helmet. Urshifu does not enjoy to see that coming. If it is a Surging Strikes, that's going to be a lot of potential damage into that slot. Terrestrialization before we get into the moves, though, and sure enough, Urshifu, Terrestrialization into the water type. Get as much damage as you can, and it's going to be a Terrestrialization apiece.
Looks like both Urshifus are wanting out of the original types, both trying to amplify damage, and then Kian probably also not wanting to risk a Bleak Wind being the damage threat, and so both turning water Terrestrialization on this turn.
And it won't be the Rain Dance, so no extra damage, which means that your opponent doesn't get extra damage either. And with the help of that speed, you are going to have the faster Urshifu. Into the Indeedee, though, again, Rocky Helmet means every hit that you do into it, you are taking a significant bunch of damage back. With the Terrestrialization, though, this might be close on whether it gets the quote-unquote one-hit KO, and it's just going to miss out regardless of the Mystic Water, regardless of that Terrestrialization. Now Urshifu on the other side gets the Surging Strikes back, though I don't think this is going to be enough damage regardless of that Rocky Helmet.
Looks like it's not, so Urshifu on Kian's side is going to hang around through the turn despite the Rocky Helmet recoil. But yeah, really pivotal turn there. Kian immediately reveals the Pokemon swap, Indeedee showing up in Game 2 when it didn't in Game 1, and kind of bringing it out in the worst case scenario for Kian, which is this Surging Strikes headed right towards it and burning so much of Urshifu's health. But now things really aren't so bad. If you can Bleak Wind plus Surging Strikes into the Urshifu on the other side, you can get a lot of damage out this turn and not have to get another contact move into the Indeedee. That's assuming that the Tornadus is faster than Kian's own Urshifu.
And assuming the Bleak Wind Storm hits when it connects, which it will into the Indeedee. So Indeedee will faint. So yeah, no follow me, didn't even attempt for it, but you make sure you get the KO, and now you can have the Surging Strikes hit into the other one. We saw how much damage that Kian did into Kian. This one, of course, will be doing a little extra thanks to the Mystic Water, but still not quite going to be enough for the KO. So Kian does get the opportunity to retaliate. Is it going to be into the Tornadus, though, or is it going to be into the opposing Urshifu to try and get rid of it? That is going to be the big thing, and it's going to be into the Tornadus instead. So it won't be really an opportunity to switch into another more powerful attacker. So Kian's going to have to stick with the two he's got at very low health.
The story of this game so far is no Surging Strikes quite getting the KO that it wants to get. But I think great for Kian that the Urshifu made it through the turn and once again continues to stick around pretty deep into this match. But it would have been really helpful to get rid of Tornadus on that last turn. Otherwise, you are still worried about a future Tailwind. Calyrex, though, really safe here. Really probably isn't that threatened by Bleak Wind plus Surging Strikes, and if you just let a Glacial Lance come out, it would be 2 KOs. Things start to simplify. You know, you have to be careful from Kian's side about trading too much, though, already down a Pokemon, but a missed Bleak Wind's helpful.
Yeah, so Calyrex will take no damage, but you do get rid of the Urshifu. Is there ever a world here where you would maybe even want to try and set up for any sort of, like, trick room to make sure that all these speedy Pokemon, or do you just go for the KO? That's going to be the question. It's such a naturally slow Pokemon anyways that we'll have to wait till the end to resolve. His Surging Strikes going to be doing the first amount of damage into this, bringing it just below half health. But yeah, you can go 2 different ways. You can go offense, or you can get the speed in your favor for the rest of the match. It will be the Glacial Lance, get rid of these 2 attackers, and yeah, double KO, easy.
Easy for now with 2 Pokemon going down, but that just is going to lay out the carpet for Kian to bring in two more Pokemon, I think it was going to be a difficult situation whether you go for the Trick Room or not. Because with Tailwind expiring soon, the Trick Room would have left Ogerpon one of the last moving Pokemon on the field, and might have been a problem with Umbreon still to reveal. Instead, you don't set up Trick Room, you get the 2 KOs now, but Zacian should be the fastest thing to move for the rest of this game. And with a ton of damage already down on Calyrex, it's not going to be able to take a hit from the Zacian. Now, Ogerpon is what you have to support next to it. The redirection really important to try to get another Glacial Lance off or a high horsepower into Zacian. I don't think we've learned the speed relationships of Umbreon and Calyrex yet, and could be really important here, which of them is able to move first in a situation. Because if you can get a foul play to knock out the Ogerpon on the other side, then probably the Zacian can't pick up both KOs.
Yeah, this will be a big one into the match. And both trainers, just 2 Pokemon apiece. Really different endgame than that first one with that impact that the Tornadus and the speed was able to do from the get-go. But getting on into this turn, Ogerpon, of course, no damage. Follow me, center of attention. Behemoth Blade into it, of course, brings it down to Sturdy. Just 1 HP left. And then the Umbreon will have to try and finish it off. Foul play, get to know a little bit more about a little bit of speeds, and that's just going to be a 1v2. Now the Calyrex, how much impact can it have? Because it is at +2 and super effective, easy 1-hit KO onto the Zacian. But then how much will this Umbreon be able to do now? Because this Calyrex is at +3 attack.
Yeah, it probably does 150, 200% of Calyrex's health bar. This is easily just a foul play KO now. So the speed, the pivotal thing here, with Umbreon moving first, there wasn't the opportunity to try to Glacial Lance the Umbreon off the field, and there won't be the opportunity to stop the foul play unless they are identically speeded, and we have more to learn, but it looks like it is well in hand for Kian.
There was actually, that was the final turn of Trick Room. I mean, not Trick Room, Tailwind. Tailwind. So that wasn't actually a confirmation. This is a better confirmation. Umbreon, all is well, will get to act first. So it's going to settle score in this series, 1 apiece, and get to go to a game 3. A little scary there when we don't quite get to know the speed, but now you have a little bit more information. Your Umbreon is at least faster or tied, and yeah, great win coming out. Ooh, I'm excited for this game 3 with how these players want to go into it.
Both games played so differently from each other. You know, most of that hinges on Kian bringing the Tornadus in order to try to play from the faster side, even deal with this Choice Scarf Urshifu much better by getting over the speed of it using the Tailwind, but left vulnerable to the Calyrex in the back because of that. Just wasn't vulnerable enough, and so it turns out very well. But if Kian is expecting it in the next game, he can make adjustments that handle the Tornadus much better. For instance, leading the Calyrex Ice Rider and having Trick Room early on. And so it's a risky game plan to try to follow up and repeat in game 3.
Is there ever the world, that turn where there was the Glacial Lance double KO, where it could have been the move to go for the Trick Room instead? Because you took the double KO on that turn, but then Kian was able to bring in a super powerful attacker next to this Umbreon. Had it been a Trick Room instead, well, then you get to act first next turn, you still take your double KO, and if your Ogerpon's just used for redirection anyways, you've then got your 2 boost, you can take care of the Zacian, and then take care of the Umbreon. Could that have been a winning path?
Yeah, I think it probably was a winning path at the end of the game. You do give up some things. For instance, the Urshifu would have still gotten to break Sturdy by going for a Aqua Jet half before the double KO came in. But even with Sturdy broken, I think only 1 redirection was really necessary, because you can either pick up the Glacial Lance KO into the Umbreon, or you can pick up the high horsepower KO into Zacian, and either way, only one of them gets to attack, and it's redirected into Ogerpon, which should have been enough to close the game. So I think, you know, in 2020 hindsight, Trick Room works out there with what Pokemon were left. And that's going to be the constant fear if you're going to go for the speedy mode with Tornadus, because it plays so poorly into Trick Room and is so vulnerable to the Glacial Lance on the other side. There's also no taunt on this Tornadus, so if you end up stuck against Calyrex Ice Rider in the lead, you can't even stop that Trick Room. And so it's just the slow mode for Kian this time. Kian's going to have to have a different game plan, and sure enough, it is. Zacian on the field, no Tornadus this time.
This is really nice if you're looking at Kian's end of the field, because Kian, yeah, this lead screams Trick Room. I'm not letting you outspeed, but there is a lot to be getting through on this turn. This is a lot of offense you can try and output.
It is. You can absolutely threaten a KO into Indy, and it's not a sure thing that like trading Indy for a Trick Room is enough, because the Urshifu is going to be pretty stable against the Calyrex Ice Rider. Calyrex Ice Rider probably also can't threaten a 1-hit KO against Zacian without first getting some Chilling Knave boost. And so Trick Room is not like it's going to immediately flip into this like steamroll of offense. It's going to be more difficult than that. But for now, without Terastallization spent early on in the game, that Water Terastallization that we talked about before the match can come out and play an important role, but also boosting. We're just going to get a whole different picture of this match in Game 3.
Yeah, of course, this Terastallization to really make sure that, hey, I'm not taking the most damage, but Swords Dance is going to try and kind of switch that up a little bit. And indeed, for the Psychic, Urshifu goes down onto this turn, but Urshifu got to set up, out of all the things that it has, goes for the taunt. So when we're looking at these two Pokemon, they don't actually attempt to go for that slow mode, just going on offense. But you now have the Zacian at a +2, you have a Calyrex on the other side, and you have an Indeedee that can't redirect to help it on this next turn.
Right, without the Tornadus, less incentive to immediately Trick Room, and with the risk of Taunt on the other side, the offense looks great. Of course, Indeedee just picking up a KO with Psychic seems really valuable. But now, like you mentioned, Zacian has the boost and is threatening a ton of damage, has offensive Terastallization available as well. I don't know the +2 Terra Fairy Play Rough calculation into Calyrex Ice Rider, but if that's a 1-hit KO being threatened, then it's a pretty strong position. But you have to watch out. The Zacian is now so low, it might be in like Psychic KO range. If you could end up just protecting Calyrex, hitting into a Protect from Calyrex and taking a Psychic back, and that would be devastating. Right? You really have to get a lot out of this Zacian now that you've traded so much on turn 1 just to keep it in this advantageous speed position and with the boost.
The Umbreon at this point, going into the Water Terastallization, not going to be spent on the Zacian to look for a little extra damage output with something like that Play Rough. Talking about the Protect, Calyrex, sure enough, is going to be nice and safe for this turn. Play Rough into the opposing slot, though, and at that +2, Indeedee goes down. You're going to take some recoil from the Rocky Helmet. You are really, really low. It's going to be the question on how low and how much it does. Not enough. It'll be fine. Yawn will do nothing, though.
Taking this KO is a big risk, though. By opening up the slot, Urshifu can just come in. If Urshifu comes in, then your Zacian is completely unable to attack, right? With no speed control behind it, yeah, sure enough, Urshifu hits the field. No Trick Room spent early means that Urshifu is the fastest thing to move. You have no redirection. You can't protect in front of it. You either switch out the 5 HP Zacian and have Qianpao take the Surging Strikes, which is terrible also, or you just give up Zacian here, and now you're fighting with Umbreon. It doesn't even have the advantage of super effective foul play into Calyrex on the other side. So by taking that KO, it really like diffused a lot of Kian's offense, because now Urshifu is there. It's been that Choice Scarf Urshifu throughout the set that really throws off the consistent outspeeding that Kian needs to have to kind of play the offensive game the way that Zacian normally wants to play.
This is a rough one, too. That's just even going to be the U-turn. You can just easily pick up the KO, bring something else in. And this Umbreon, when you have these tools to maybe try and slow down the match, that's a tough one when, yeah, there's just pivots, and it takes a whole turn for things to enact. So now you get a chance for Kian, you get the KO, you get to bring in the Ogerpon to redirect away it from this Calyrex if you don't want to just go on the offensive and foul play. When you're not looking at Chilling Knave boost, it's a very different attack. Glacial Lance, not going to be the most damage, but still a nice enough chunk.
Yeah, still really a solid amount of damage. And now also with Umbreon having gone to Water Terastallization on the previous turn to take Glacial Lance better, is completely vulnerable to Ogerpon offense. It does not have Protect, and so it's just a really easy place to put a Power Whip and pick up a KO. Qianpao is a single targeting attacker, and with the Choice Scarf Urshifu in the back, cannot win a game from there. So you're probably like relying on a Power Whip to have a Power Whip miss to have a chance in this game. Otherwise, it seems so simple to, or maybe you have also no ice spinner, so not even a chance of flinching this Ogerpon. It's going to get a chance to attack.
Hey, we've seen, I think, for us, we've seen 3 Power Whips and 2 of them have missed. So, hey, where there's a will, there's a way. It's definitely a little bit more dire in this situation, though, with these last 2 Pokemon. Not even going to go for it, though. The Calyrex, you want to make sure that this restricted is protected at all costs. Ice Spinner is going to be a lot of damage into it and will bring it just down to 30, but we're still at the point, too, that you get rid of this Ogerpon and then, well, it's going to be just the Urshifu in the back that can really do a lot of damage. You're still going to have to get through a turn 2 of this Calyrex that's able to just double attack, and this is just more damage into the Umbreon, and as well, just, I was going to say softening up the Qian Pal. That brings it down to about a third of its health after the critical hit.
Yeah, the critical hit should mean that Urshifu can easily finish this off. And beyond all of the other problems for Kian here, the damage against Urshifu is actually really hard to find here as well. Foul Play is not going to do very much as a resisted move. Qian Pao can't do that much damage to Urshifu. So Urshifu has the time to just surging strikes through these Pokemon. Still, Kian has the game well in hand. It really goes back to that turn 1 trade where Kian had such a good game plan of having the 2 slower Pokemon out, but just taking in the taunt and getting so much damage back on that turn 1.
Yeah, that's it. You have the Urshifu to try and go for the taunt, try and make sure this slow mode, there's no redirection, but that Psychic in return. Indeed, showing that it can definitely be a little bit more of an offense threat as well. And now with just the Qianbao on the field, that's the last little bit of damage. And it's going to be Kian 6-0 here at the Atlanta Regional Championships. We talked about, hey, these locals can be a great way to get ready for your event. He's known in this local scene, some menace in the local scenes, and it's going to be securing a spot in day 2 now at Atlanta. Way to go.
What a start to go 6-0 and continue to play at such a high level. And you know, every round it gets more and more difficult because every round you're playing someone else with that same record, but playing someone else who's on 5-0.